Let's go from finance, because finance is the easiest one. It's pretty much just final outcome over the initial outcome in most cases. Okay, so let's say final outcome over the initial outcome. If you need it as a percentage, you can just do a times 100, and you can get that like that, something percentage, right? But usually, like even earnings per share, right? So let's say earnings per share is pretty much the net income minus the preferred dividends, pretty much how much money you're really able to put into your, your shares, and the weighted number of outstanding, average outstanding, weighted average number of outstanding shares, right? So how much are you public and private, how much is holding? That's your earnings per share. So that would be your EPS. And we have, I'm not going to go too deep on the finance, but okay, 1 plus R times N applies here. Okay, you add initial investment to this, that then becomes internal rate of return and net present value. So that's after, accounting for all the hoard captured return. So this one uses beta to calculate risk. How much is the risk associated? That's calculated with the risk. You have rate, risk, and something else. So this is how much is the risk to reward. That's the idea of CAPM. And efficient frontier is like the least risk for the highest reward, right? These are different types of businesses. Net margin is total margin after you account for all the, all the hiccups in the middle. So your real margin is this much, like after you spend on liabilities, or what kind of money you're really making, and the amount of money you're making from your assets. So pretty much assets to asset turnover. So your average in inventory, average assets over the net profit. It's called asset turnover. And then we also have inventory turnover, which is your total cost of goods sold. So COGS. So it's total cost of goods sold over the average inventory. So average inventory. Okay. So this is the what's this? Yeah, asset turnover and inventory turnover, right? The next one on my list is what's the word? The 10 equity. So it's of course what you own versus what you owe, right? So that you gotta pay that. So income statement is of course what's the P&L? So what's the P&L? And we have the balance sheet. So that's the assets, accounts payable and receivable. So receivable, payable. Cash flow statement. Where does the cash flows go? This is used for mergers and acquisitions most of the time. There's also a sheet called comparable analysis where you can compare different companies. We have things like EV over EBITDA. This is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. There's also earnings before interest, taxes. So we have this. We also have EV over EBIT, like I said, and we have the price to earnings ratio. So how much is the trading price of a stock over how much you actually make out of it. Okay, so that's the price to earnings ratio. And we have the EV, which is just determined as EV. So EV, actually also known as TEV, total enterprise value, is pretty much the market cap. So market MC minus debt, MC plus debt minus cash. Okay, how much you pull out of the company, and the market cap can be further taken as price per share. So price per share times the total number of outstanding shares. That's private and public combined. So that's the market capitalization. So if you want to find the price of a share, you can divide this by this, right? What else? What else do we have here? Yeah, so pretty much if you want to find anything in most cases, it's either 1 plus R times N if it involves time value of money, and if it involves return on investment, or like what it yields you, then it's of course the final outcome. So final outcome over the initial outcome, like I said. Yeah, so once again, that's what all these stuff refer to. Return on equity, assets, current ratio, that's assets over liabilities. That's your current ratio. The quick ratio, I didn't really look into it. Liquidity is how much money you can pull out. Weighted average cost of capital, how to keep your company financed properly, how much you need to spend on assets and debts. Dividend is how much you need to pay back to the shareholders, like yield. Working capital manager. Diversification, comparability, price to earnings. These are part of the comparable analysis, also known as a precedent transaction analysis sheet. Okay. Diversification. Efficient frontier is like the frontier is pretty much the lowest risk and the highest reward. Diversification, risk to return. Yeah, exactly. So CAPM is risk to reward. I've explained what this is. Value at risk. So standard deviation. What's the skewness of the bell curve? So if it's more towards this side, that means there's more negative risk. So there's a negative value at risk. If it's more towards this side, then it's good. If it's in the middle, then it's near the mean. That's okay. So mergers and acquisitions, once again, you use the comparable analysis sheet. So comparable analysis sheet for mergers and acquisitions. So you can understand which companies to really merge or acquire with. For this, you need to actually get a loan. So you call this a leverage buyout, where you get a loan from a company and then you buy that other company. So merge. So calls and puts is longing. So you can pick the phone up, you put the phone down. So leverage buyout, hedging, yeah. By finance, these are simple. They pull the data and then model it. So sensitivity tables, so like when you change an input, the output of the model drastically changes. Let's say you make this like x5. Now the output is equal to like, instead of this, now it's equal to that. So sensitivity, how sensitive is it, right? It's part of financial modeling. So that's as far as finance. This is a part of business. So once again, debt to equity. So you can see what's the ratio. So let's say debt to equity, right? I think this is the formula for this. I'm not too sure about this one though. So overall, it's basically the total amount net over the initial, right? So initial or whatever you're holding, right? As a part of what you have or the initial amount of money you put in. For example, EPS. Your net income minus preferred dividends over weighted average number of outstanding shares, right? So that's EPS, price to earnings is price over your actual earnings for this share. So that's the PE ratio. PE ratio. All right, let's see. I've explained this. I've explained this. I've explained these. I've explained these. It's got a cash flow. Let me just redraw it for you guys. 1 plus R times N over cash flow of different years. If you have, so this is to understand how much the company is going to grow over like 5 years or any number of years. But if you want to find the internal rate of return or the net present value, you can add initial investment onto this. R times N over CF N. It's kind of cash flows. Yep, this is done. Debt to equity current ratio. Yeah, so this is how can the people in this demographic really afford to buy this product at this price? Can they? Can they? Question mark. Right? That's product, price, place, promotion. So dividing people onto who will like your stuff, right? As in what you're selling, car products. And then there's niches within that. So segmentation, and then you target specific niches by positioning yourself as like the best, I don't know, spoiler kit, body kit business or something. I don't know. Something like that. You have like brand equity. So for example, Gucci and Louis Vuitton, LV, have high brand equity because people love these, like, you know, people think of them as really sentimental. Like, look at that. He's just staring at it. He's like, oh my god. Yeah. Brand equity positioning, exactly. So this is social media marketing. This is customer lifetime value over customer acquisition cost for high net worth brands. Or for small businesses, it's of course customer acquisition costs over customer lifetime value, right? So it's low net worth jobs. I mean businesses, right? This is the 5 forces. So how is the buyer's bargaining power, seller's bargaining power? Buyer's bargaining power, supplier's bargaining power, and potential new entrants, new people coming in. What's the threat from them? And then existing people, what's the threat from them? And what's the threat from the outside world, right? Like macro. So micro is just the Porter's 5 forces. Actually, this is actually part of Porter's five forces is mainly like micro, and we have the other one which is for macro. And soft is pretty much current working product. Okay, product, a new innovative product. So it's an NP. That's a new product. Let's say this one, and then we have the current market. Right, this is the current market, and we have the new market, as in diversifying or expanding. So how you're gonna diversify and expand. So this is low, this is high, and of course this is low and high. Excessive. You get what I did. Then we have the Boston Consultancy Group 1, which is the way I see it. This is the more you share, the more you grow, right? So in this case, it's like normal, but I like remaining like this, so low and high. So this is the market growth, and this is the market share. So the less the market share is, the more you can grow, right? Of course. And then soft metrics. Again, process mapping. You just draw everything in nice diagrams. You understand where problems are. So in supply chain, you have different aspects. First of all, we have the outbound operations, or outbound inbound traffic. Let's just call it inbound traffic. The operations ops. We have the outbound traffic, so it's outbound traffic. We have the sales and marketing. So it's this is of course not that difficult. Brick and mortar and and stuff like that. We have returns. Okay, returns. So pretty much it sometimes people return stuff, right? So this is where you convince them to buy, but this is where you ship through distribution networks to different places. And this is where you get the supplier and the raw material from the supplier, if that's necessary, and you get it to yourself, and then you handle the operations with the raw materials. And there's also theories about this. So if you have, for example, there's this thing called JIT, which is just in time. So only when you need things to keep things lean, as in to minimize waste. That's just only by inventory when we need. Okay. And then we have the economic order quantity. So only stay within economy, and when it comes to getting the order quantity, so that way everything is like smooth and balanced out. Okay. So economic order quantity, and this is so analyzing this where issues are and bottlenecks are, and pretty much finding solutions, and analyzing what kind of output the solution that you made for this problem is giving, and just sort of keeping track and going behind it. That's called value chain analysis, right? In the value chain, let's think of it like the supply chain, but that's not really only for supply chains. Value chain analysis, pretty much like you can see where you can add value in this chain, right? COR, so it's supply chain operations reference. It's pretty much this inbound logistics, and outbound logistics, right? I just call it inbound traffic, but not logistics. Operations, outbound logistics, social media marketing, brick and mortar, and then returns and things like that. And you use the Ansoff matrix when you want to expand Ansoff. And you have the BCG Boston Consultancy Group matrix for when you want to test out market share against market growth. This is actually part of the portfolio management. Core competencies is what are the strengths and capabilities you have over your competitor, the little bro, the competitor. See, he's just like sad as shit. Look at him crying. See, look at these bozos. Because I have some capability and strength which keeps me, above them, if that makes sense. So what's that? And that could be in 3 different aspects. Cost leadership, as in I get things for cheaper, supply for cheaper. So supplying and everything, right? Everything. I'm in operations or inbound logistics, operations and outbound logistics, and sales and marketing, and even returns. I am leading. Okay, all these places combined, I'm still making more money than the competitor. So that's cost leadership. Then we have the differentiation, which is how am I doing things different? What's my value, unique value, right? And then we have the focus, which is what's my focused target and what's my goal here? What kind of niche am I in? Everything related to who am I specifically trying to speak to. Maybe explain this. Maslow's is pretty much how the life is. The first one is self-esteem, and then I think it's love. I didn't really understand this fully, but it's pretty much like a diagram of like how people should feel and things you need to survive. That's Maslow. And we have Herzberg, which is very corporate. So it's just hygiene, and motivation. Okay, these are jobs. That's what influences people to stay at a job. What else? Servant is pretty much for the whole chain. Servant people needs to serve each of these different layers, like all the to the very very bottom. And I think transformational is like people at the very top level, and then transactional is like, I think those are the guys who bring it down the chain, and then servant is the people who are basically just have to serve for everyone. Team dining. This is a defined direct defined plan in analyze defined plan operations, and that's part of the different one. But if for this one, it was I'm trying to still revise this one. Create, form, build, initiate, remove, generate, sustain, incorporate. Create, form, initiate, remove, sustain, incorporate, sustain, incorporate. Okay, remove, generate, sustain, incorporate, generate, remove, generate, sustain, incorporate. Create, create, form, incorporate, remove, generate, sustain, incorporate. Initiate, initiate. So initiate, I'll have to refer to this 3 more times. Team dynamics, that's fine. Again, market structure, we have 3, which is monopoly. The monopoly, which is only a few people are like having majority of the share. And then we have the oligopoly, which everybody is doesn't have really significant influence over the other people. We have monopoly competition, which is competition between the monopolies, right? So that means within themselves they fight it out. And we have the perfect competition, which means the most ideal scenario, everyone can survive in the less competitors. GDP is gross domestic product, so how much so they get a certain, let's say, yearly basis, how much products, goods and services are made in the economy, and that's like bought and sold. So apart from that, we have game theory. If I'm in a prison, it's a prison theory. When one prisoner, jailer that I'm with, when we are trying to escape prison, and one jailer betrays me, and then the 3 of us get caught, and then he goes scot-free and gets out, and then what's the risk and everything. So opportunity cost is also one thing. So what do I give up for this specific thing to receive this reward, right? I gotta give up something, right? That's the risk, or something, right? Always. So for X, for giving up on X, for giving up on Y, what does X have to offer, right? Why am I going with this? What am I going to miss with this? You get what I mean? Inflation. Yeah, lean is pretty much like keeping, like I said, minimizing waste. And Six Sigma methodologies is pretty much just collecting data for a large number of samples, collecting the data, and making sure you reduce the number of defects for all of these at scale. So that way, when you're doing it in scale, it's as close to as 0 as possible. It just stays in the middle as much as possible. Less defects, less on these sides. And we have the seed, and the seed, we have the Series A. Seed is the venture capital. Seed, we have Series A, so SA, and then SB, and then I think there's Series C, and then finally you get funded. Something like that. Scaling and growth hacking, product market fit. How do you the right kind of research? Pretty much asking the right kind of questions for things that have demand. Or if you have the Ansoff metrics, you gotta make sure you understand the risk. New product, existing product, new market, current market, new markets. Right? This is high, this is low, this is low, this is high. Cool. That's pretty much it, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching. If you guys wanna, this is DDoS Shield, CloudWatch only for resources, CloudTrail for trail events, as in activity. So API activity, all in CloudTrail. CloudWatch, you can look for all the resources. We have a security group, which is the virtual firewall for inbound and outbound traffic. So there's a set of predefined rules. It's stateful, unlike a normal network access control list. That one is stateless, no state, so no state. And we have the firewall. So this is just a virtual firewall. That's what a security group is. inbound and outbound traffic controls it, and auto scaling groups for EC2 servers. And EC2 servers have server configurations. EC2 servers, and they go up or down depending on when the load is needed, or stay in the middle. So scales up or down depending on that. EC2 servers, and we have Lambda and Fargate for containerized solutions. For this, you have ECS, container service, yes, container registry, and then we have EKS for orchestration, multiple containers. You can check all this using Cost Explorer, and you can understand what sort of budgets were going overdue in the past months and stuff like that. Yeah, so this is encryption and rest. Transit means moving. So when request response cycles, or when you're making data modifications on the hard drive. Speaking of which, you can use direct connect if you want to go through a private gateway. So that way you don't need to be accessed by the public gateway, doesn't see it. So on premises to cloud migration. That's a cloud. So yeah, infrastructure as code. Once again, I've explained what this is. Kubernetes, role-based access control. Policies are, set of predefined security instructions. We have temporary roles, also known as roles. And we also have user groups, users and groups. So these are the shared permissions. So you give it a bunch of shared permissions, and you assign users to this. That these guys have that. And other than that, it's policies for security configuration, vulnerability management. Forget, things like that. See, S3 is a simple storage, objects and stuff. We subnets, so we have private subnet. In an EC2 server, we have a private subnet, public subnet. The public subnet, you need to use a NAT gateway for the private subnet to access. I'll just do X here. This is public, it's private. You need to use a NAT gateway, and it translates that traffic and lets you access the internet through the NAT gateway. Through the internet gateway on the private public subnet. So KMS only for keys, secret manager for other things. Secret manager, this is for keys only, KMS. Key management service, yes sir. Let me explain what this is. So this is red teaming, how to privilege escalate in a security group. So a bunch of different users. Once you get access to this chap right here, how are you gonna move up laterally in that security group to access as much? So there's dev security group. Right, how are you gonna go up the chain? First you exploit the IP, DNS IP. Then you find the port, let's say 22, and that's SSH, bingo. Try brute forcing it with random combos, passwords and usernames. Username here, password here, bunch of different combos. Once again, once one of them works out, you get into the system. Okay, log in. See? So if any credentials are leaked, you just make a repeater request. So you put a request with that token, and as a response you get the private information over here. Then this is like your bank details just off of one little token. That's pretty much it. Security information, event management, CloudTrail, once again API activity, event driven. ELK, which is Elasticsearch, Logstash, Kibana. The Logstash is basically where all the logs go and stash, like I said. Elasticsearch is how you search through a bunch of logs. Kibana is how you visualize it, the logs, like a machine learning model, where and how to visualize it properly to understand problems further. Event driven, serverless. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got for this video, guys. See you guys, bye bye.